Hi there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, this 7th day of September 2013. And there's plenty to comment on this week. And we wanted to begin by giving a little bit of, laying a little bit of a foundation of what the deeper picture is, what's going on with Syria. And here's a U.S.-Russia confrontation, danger of military escalation. We will help Syria in the event of a military strike, says Putin.
Yeah, and actually even General Dempsey, the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, was basically telling Obama that, hey, you can't just go in there and there's going to be some serious repercussions here. So, yeah, this is should be a duh, and I think everybody was in the United States and was pretty alarmed at how Obama thought he could just waltz in there, and it didn't really matter if he had the support of Congress or not, but he ended up saying, oops, never mind. So I am very, very encouraged because people are not only waking up, but they're making their voice known. And we were talking earlier about how the truth travels more slowly. The lie travels halfway around the world while the truth is still putting its shoes on. But I think enough people have woken up and can see the truth now that it's really gaining momentum. The truth is catching up to the lies, and they just can't pull these fast ones off like they used to.
So there is a lot going on with Russia, and of course we've all heard that in the news. But the story goes a little deeper than what people talk about. Obviously, there is potential for the consequence of Russia taking nuclear retaliation action against the U.S. at some point if we go too far in attacking Syria. But Russia has a vested interest here, and they're trying to protect their interest. And there's that whole level. Interestingly enough, the Pope came out in support of Putin and against Obama. And Obama is definitely the warmonger here. America's definitely the one trying to push the buttons to start the war. But I guess CBS didn't like that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what the stance this Pope is taking, and we mentioned before the no immunity for church and state officials, etc., that took effect on September 1st. And this is along those lines where he's making public statements and basically putting people on notice, saying, look, what you're doing isn't right. And there's a lot of muscle behind that people don't even realize because of the whole global power structure actually being tied back to the Vatican and to Rome and the Pope and all that. So, yeah, the fact that he would come out against Obama, has really got to be reeling, and the U.S. corporation has really got to be reeling from these blows that they didn't really expect.
Well, and of course, backing them up is the cabal. And I loved one thing that Gerald Celente said on the Alex Jones radio broadcast yesterday, that if you stand up to these guys, that really inside they're weak, and if you stand up to them, they will fold like deck chairs.
Yeah. That really goes to another conversation that we've had, and that is out there, is that these bullies, they can be very intimidating and tell you that they're going to crush you and whatnot. But if you actually stand your ground and you know where your rights are, then they will fold. A lot of people don't know where their rights are. For instance, as far as the Constitution, they say, I have my constitutional rights, but you don't realize that everything about you, your whole paper trail, etc., makes you a 14th Amendment citizen, which means that you do not have constitutional rights. You have civil rights, etc., etc. So that's a side trail. But the whole point is that if you stand up to these guys with true, lawful, and legal basis for your stance, they won't do whatever they want like we tend to think they will. We think they're lawless, but they're really obeying this covert code that's been foisted on us, and you have to learn which end is up in order to make progress. So, yeah, it's encouraging, but at the same time, you've got to do your homework and find out what ground you really have to stand on. Have reclaim your sovereignty.
Just the sheer numbers of Americans that are agreeing at this time that we don't want our country to attack Syria has a lot of weight. There's been like 400 to 1. Some people say that people have been contacting Congress and telling them that they don't want to go to war. They don't want the U.S. military forces to attack Syria. And just to, if you're watching the video, you can see that I scrolled up to another article on Mario Murillo Ministries. The military is embarrassed and dismayed by Obama's amateurism. And the subtitle, A War the Pentagon Doesn't Want. And this was written by Robert H. Scales, who is a retired Army Major General and former commandant of the U.S. Army War College. So the military is, as we've been hearing for quite some time from people like Benjamin Fulford, the military is not supportive of some of the administration's policies as far as going to war.
Yeah, I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, advising Obama that he couldn't just cavalierly go in there. And more and more we are aware of white hats within the Pentagon, not by name, but things that we read allude to them and how they don't really, guess what, they don't really want to start World War III. That's a pretty good thing. Yeah, they're not all raving lunatics.
That's a very good thing. We don't bring nuclear weapons, do we? And just back to the natural gas pipeline idea, because this really there's a lot of substance to this. Is the United States going to go to war with Syria over a natural gas pipeline? And this article is from InfoWars earlier in the week. But what the circumstances are is Europe currently gets the lion's share of its natural gas from Russia, but Europe is wanting to, that gives Russia a certain degree of control over Europe, and Europe is trying to avoid that, and of course the cabal is trying to avoid that, because Russia through BRICS is taking a stand against the cabal. So Europe wants to have alternative sources of natural gas that leave Russia out, and Qatar wants to run a line through Syria to bring natural gas to Europe and cut Russia out of the equation.
Yeah, that's what it's really all about. You don't for a minute think that that this is a war about human rights and standing up to some chemical warfare attack that everybody basically now knows is a false flag. So, yeah, it's about an oil pipeline and changing who controls that region through which the natural gas can be piped to Europe. That's what the war is really all about. It's about who gets that control.
And, I think as Americans, our natural response might be to want to take the power away from Russia. It's kind of interesting that our government has become so deceptive that they don't even tell us the truth about that. I mean, they may have gained more ground had they been honest about that than they have with this false flag chemical attack.
Well, I think that we were already saying, I'm not our rogue government, but the rogue government had already been so far down the line with this plan that had to do with destabilizing all of the countries in the Middle East and putting rebels in charge so that they could begin to usher in their great Armageddon and this clash of civilizations. They were already executing that game plan, so it wasn't really opportune to actually tell the truth. And that all the more reason why things should shift, because obviously that's a terrible plan, a horrible thing to be doing, and they have no choice in that plan but to continue to lie.
And this is a somewhat older article, blog from Benjamin Fulford, and he wrote at this time, as most aware people realize, the war in Syria is financed by Qatar and Saudi Arabia because they want to build a pipeline through Syria to send gas to Western Europe. Russia, which now dominates gas sales to Western Europe, does not want the competition, so they are helping Syria fight against the pipeline mercenaries. Here are a few indications of how the power balance has changed. The governments of France, the UK, and Washington, D.C. call for a no-fly zone in Syria. The Pentagon, Russia, and China veto this. The Pentagon repeatedly refuses hysterical requests by slave politicians in Washington, D.C. to attack Syria. Turkey, which used to actively support the anti-Syrian moves, stopped doing so after a visit from Putin.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? Somebody has called Putin the leader of the free world now. I think that was on Drudge Report or something. So, boy, the things are really shifting. It's amazing.
They are shifting, and it's easy for us as Americans, I think, to become confused, partly because of how brainwashed we were by the Cold War to believe that Russians were evil, and there were things, of course, that were going on that have not been good, and the people of Russia have been used and manipulated by the cabal to their own ends, just as the people of America have. But Putin really seems to be a voice for liberty.
Well, I wouldn't put it that far. I would say that Putin is on record, and it's clearly obvious that having one group of people in charge of everything in the world is a bad idea. So he wants separation of powers in terms of the global power structure, and he's not about to roll over and be anybody's lapdog. And I have to say that's a good thing. We want sovereign nations to be able to remain sovereign, and any nation that will stand up to the bully on the block, which happens to be the military-industrial complex ever since World War II, that is the one who has been going around the world and starting wars and claiming to be doing it for the little guy when it's really for the profit of the corporations. Well, and that's been exposed way back by Colonel Smedley Butler and War is a Racket, etc., etc. So anybody that stands up to that has got to have something good going for them.
And here is an article that's actually new today, September 7th. Europe plunged into energy crisis as Russia cuts off gas supply via Ukraine. And they have a story here why they're justifying doing this. But Russia cut gas exports to Europe by 60% today. So that is significant.
Yeah, in this article, it kind of tries to minimize this by saying that this is an annual struggle, and there are some bad guys that are leaking this gas line, and they have to determine where it is, and that's the reason for the cutoff. I think that's really all posturing. I think my first reaction to this headline is Russia is showing their muscle. They are showing Europe that they are not afraid to experience a little bit of economic loss in order to solidify and prevent the loss of political power due to their pipeline, the routing of their pipeline through Syria. So I think this is an obvious challenge to those that would seek to derail Russian energy power.
And of course, even the war in Syria has been promoted by France, England, Italy, and some of those countries that actually received their natural gas from Russia. So it's if Russia can use this to keep them from going to war, I suppose that's not altogether a bad thing.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to point out was that even John Kerry said, in a rare moment of truth there, said that, hey, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they're going to pay for this war. And in terms of, how can we afford to go to war, the United States, because we're like broke. So he's basically admitting that we're really not serving our own national interest here. We've got other countries that really have a stake in this, and he's not really being truthful and telling you what that stake is. And I don't even really fully believe the claim. Obviously, they're not going to pay for everything, and let alone the lives that are lost for no purpose for the United States, no financial or national interest. So anyway, yeah, it's time that the truth is coming out in this, and that is the real encouraging thing.
Here's an article, analysis, little chance of Europe breaking Russia's gas dominance. This is from July 18th of this year. It's a Reuters article. And, when I hear about, struggles for oil, struggles for natural gas, it makes me really sad because the losers really are always the people who are dependent on these energy sources, when many people claim that there is current technology that could be used to serve free energy really to the people of the world.
Yeah, this whole struggle that's going on now is basically because we the sheeple have been kept in the dark and have allowed monopoly men to set up a control structure on the planet, forgetting for a moment whether who's the good guy, who's the bad guy in terms of Russia or the United States or Qatar or whoever. These are substances that are being fought over because monopolies have been built around these substances, and that was by design because they were financed by bankers in order to set up these monopolies. And I would say that they're not even really bankers. They're commodity men that have a monopoly on the commodities that pretend to be money. So anyway, yeah, this is all a big monopoly game when there is abundant free energy, and people on other planets, if there are somebody looking down, they must be scratching their head and thinking, what are these idiots doing? There's abundant energy.
Yeah, we hear so much about carbon taxes and carbon fuels and how bad they are for the planet, but it's the same guys who are making all those claims who are stifling the free sources of energy. So go figure.
Keshe Foundation, etc. So we tend to believe that stuff is real, don't know how much of it is actually developed and how much is just still theory. But in theory, I totally believe it, that there really is not a lack. God created abundance, we're living in abundance, and our eyes have been blinded from seeing it. So wars are fought.
But thank God and thank all the Americans who have stood up this week and said, no, we don't want to go to war. It's so wonderful that so many people have called Congress. So many people have been talking about this. And it brings a tear to the eye to think about how this message has really gotten through to the American people. the American people do care and are willing to take a stand against war and for peace.
Yahoo!
And we have this really interesting article from Prison Planet. Military repositions nukes. Quote, they don't move all of these assets unless they plan on using them. And a base where the people serving on the base were not even aware that there were nuclear warheads received notification that some of their warheads were going to be taken off base without any of the official paperwork or any of the authorizations or procedures that are supposed to be in place.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that in my mind anyway, this is not a separate story from what we were just talking about. This is closely related. What we have here, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, is the cabal getting desperate and preparing to set up a false flag event that can be blamed on Syria. You have Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina saying that, gosh, if we don't invade Syria, then some Syrians are going to set off a nuclear warhead in the harbor in South Carolina, Charleston or something. So, yeah, that is the terrorist himself talking, and more people are seeing through this thinly veiled threat, and I don't, of course they're dangerous. They're as dangerous as a cornered rat, cornered whatever that is that's even more dangerous than a rat. I don't know. These guys with nuclear warheads are pretty dangerous. So this has to be taken seriously.
A cornered mongoose.
Yeah, mongoose. That's a good one. A mongoose in a bathtub?
That's a marmot. That's
a marmot. Oh, yeah. More dangerous than a marmot in a bathtub. It's encouraging that people are seeing this, but it doesn't mean that these cornered cabal guys are not a serious threat. We have to take them seriously and deal with them seriously, and I think Alex did a great job in emphasizing the serious nature of this.
Yeah, so dear Americans, don't roll over and go back to sleep, please. Please stay awake, and let's all remain vigilant together and be looking to protect our freedom and to preserve our freedom. And we hope that you are having a pleasant weekend, and we thank you for joining us for this week's Pearls of Liberty.
And as always, we remind you to see the world the way that it really is. See yourself in it. Walk your walk. You are the one you've been waiting for.